So our next speaker is Mr. Mike Caffrey. He is a partner at Avero Infrastructure and a senior consultant. He is going to share his thoughts with us today on 5G technology, the future of internet. Please help me in welcoming him.
My name is Mike Caffrey. I'm with Avero Infrastructure. Thanks for having me today. I want to talk to you about something that I've become very passionate about in the last couple of years. The company I work for is Avero Infrastructure is a fairly young company. We started out in consulting specifically to small and medium-sized government. Our focus is on our energy is focused on bringing technology and best in practice processes to small and medium-sized government. Typically an underserved segment. These customers often don't have the flexibility, nor do they have the resources to adapt to new challenges. Many departments in the IT segment are understaffed. Some have no IT at all. I can tell you in Tennessee, speaking for county government alone, out of 95 counties in Tennessee, 85 of those counties do not have any IT. So when you talk about how elections are run, how those are monitored, how security is implemented and made real, it's by business partners, small business partners that travel from elsewhere, and from the state. The state tries to offer some help. You can imagine how good that is. Many IT departments, as I pointed out, are understaffed, and some have no staff at all. Avero's staff, though, what we do is we typically partner with the team, usually non-IT folks at the government level. And what we do then is we implement current off-the-shelf technology and that helps them define a new successful change for themselves. This ranges anywhere from upgrades to infrastructure, which we would go in and make it better, faster, cheaper, and all the way up to ERP and MRP solutions. Again, in the government space, oftentimes a small budget has been dedicated to these items. Many times the implementation is incomplete, and almost always is it inefficient or ineffective. But the thing that I want to talk about today, and relevant to that, is that some time ago we got involved with the utility side. As many of you know, especially in rural America, utilities are oftentimes a department or a partner to city or county government. So the utility might be offered water, electricity, sometimes gas. But the utility is a revenue-generating element to local government. Then obviously you have tax revenue on top of that. But what we did is we partnered with city utilities to create a regional fiber backbone that services city and county governments. In short, we created a government IT services agency that maintains, extends, and manages fiber backbone similar to what might be an ISP. The difference being that we don't charge fees like an ISP. The fees are shared by all of the partner communities. Our customers typically come to us by way of referral. They bring in, I call them puzzles, challenges. I hate calling them problems because everybody has those, right? but what we do is we help them reassemble the pieces in a more effective way, sometimes in a way they hadn't envisioned when the project first started. Next slide. So the topic is about 5G. And for those of you in the comm business that remember, it was a long and arduous rollout when we went from 3G to 4G, 4G to 4G LTE, lots of project management, and many of us close to the rollout for 4G LTE, and I don't know how many project managers were part of a daily call for them. Had to be run that way. It was that intense and had to be done in that particular way. 5G stands to be more complex in its implementation. It involves more infrastructure, more investment, more time. The 5G rollout began, by the way, in late 2017. So if you have noticed, does anybody know what 5G is? So you'll see antennas on top of the pole. You'll see the poles having a lot more stuff on them. They look like the repeaters, perhaps, on top of the towers, the cell phone repeaters that used to have on the towers. 5G rollout began at the end of 2017. It's remarkable that it is where it is today. Today you'll see incredibly dense fiber running from point A to point B. The one that I'm intimately aware of runs from Chattanooga, Tennessee up to Knoxville. It's almost 800 strands of fiber, and it goes from Chattanooga to Knoxville and all those communities along the way. When you talk to the guys that are putting it up or down, if they're burying it, they'll tell you it's about densification. It's about reclaiming the backhaul to the tower, but I'm here to tell you there's something else. So when you talk about 5G, who here believes that we're just talking about cell phone service? Is anybody? The next cell phone you're going to need to buy? It's a lot more than that. 5G is a bit of a game changer. We're at least a year and a half away from seeing what I'm going to share with you, but 5G gives us the ability to reach you in your home or business without having to do what traditionally was fiber to the home. So keep in mind, when I've worked with utilities, what was already up on the pole we needed to bring into the home, and then once it was in the home, we needed a way to meter it so we can charge you for it. 5G means that once it's on the pole, I can get to you without putting any more infrastructure in play. I can get to businesses, I can get to stadiums full of people, I can get to remote areas of the countryside, depending on how far I want to extend this. So imagine your home now without cable box, without access points, without switches, without internal wiring. I obviously have guys that do this stuff, but when we moved into our home just recently, running Ethernet Cat6 to every room seemed like the thing to do. In another year and a half, that would have been a waste of money. So, quick survey. How many of you, anyone want to volunteer how much they pay for their cable bill? How much?
The internet's $100, cable $115, so $215 all that.
$215. Anybody higher than $215? How much?
$2.25.
$2.25. I'm about where you are, $2.25. What kind of service do you get for $2.25?
I have gigabit fiber internet in the house.
You have gigabit to the house?
Yes.
Do you, sir, do you have gigabit? Do you have gigabit for the one?
So I have 400 megs, and I don't think that 1G is actually available in New York City.
Okay. Way in the back, you raised your hand, how much?
Yeah, I pay 200. I have about 400 down as well. I could get KD, but I don't pay it.
So keep in mind, from a marketing and consumer point of view, when you have fiber, you'll have the same number up and down. right? So if you bought 100, it'll be 100 up, 100 down, and it'll be true and consistent. When there's copper along the way, you'll have numbers that look more like, I paid for 100
Right.
up and down, but I'm getting 80 down and maybe 10 or 20 up. When you're being sold fiber, you aren't necessarily getting fiber, right? In a 5G world, you will get whatever they're selling you up and down. Now, that being said, what you're going to see in a 5G world is you're going to see not gigabit. In many cases, you're going to see 300 meg, but it's going to be 300 meg up and down, which means also with some of the problems that we're solving with 5G, latency, the number of devices you can have at the same time, and a host of others. Consider this, right now, with your 4G phone, to download a movie might take 17 minutes. In 5G, it'll take less than 15 seconds.
Wow.
By the way, 6G and 7G are already in the lab. Next slide. So let's talk about where we've been, and for many of us, I know a lot of you are a lot younger than I am, but in that 1G, 2G, 3G have probably been the bulk of your lives. I was around when there were bag phones, so it's kind of embarrassing. But, and my mom and dad still have one, by the way. 1G was the analog phone, 2G was basic texting, 3G, video calling, streaming. So 3G is when we first entered in the world of small cell. So small cell was up on a tower somewhere. I could hit a small area or a large area with bandwidth and reach whoever my consumer base was. That started with 3G. 4G, and then 4G LTE, high def video streaming. 5G is complete wireless. So think about, again, back to the infrastructure, how much money does it take? How much are we going to be able to save when provider does not have to pay to get to your home or business? When I cut wiring out of the picture, when I can put small cell at the top of a tall building and hit the whole downtown area. Things that are possible are downtown rejuvenation that doesn't require hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment from multiple vendors, including the city itself. In other words, I can go into that old part of town that looks pretty cool, but nobody wants to move into because everything there is old and doesn't work. I can move into that, and you can use this as a utility to inspire other folks to move to that area. Small town utility in Tennessee already put up 384 strands of fiber on every light pole in most of their neighborhoods. They do not use it for anything. They were hoping to do fiber to the home. Fiber to the home was what was their goal, and they found out through a consulting firm, not mine, that it would cost them $124 million to make that real. And although conceived as a possible profitable line of business, it would have taken 20 years to break even, given subscriber rates that were, in my mind, a little bit aggressive. Next slide, please. Slicing. Slicing is going to be one of the new things. You might not hear that much about it. Think of it this way, is I have the ability now, if I'm your provider, to give you multiple classes of service within the same infrastructure. So I can charge this gentleman here, I can provide him a slow service for, say, $50 a month, and on that same brand, I can give 100 meg service to that guy over there for $100 or $200 a month. Probably not that big a deal to most of us, but when we look at the upsell opportunity, especially in the consumer space, it's huge, right? And when you look at the business space, those of us that are business owners, our eyes are always bigger than our stomach when it comes to buying the things our business needs, and especially when it's coming at us cheap. Slicing is one of those things you'll hear more about. But in that class system, what can be more American than upgrading and upgrading and upgrading again until I've bought as much as I can buy, even though I don't use it? Next slide. In the commercial space, As I mentioned earlier, fiber speeds will exceed 300 meg and will be up to 1 gig. The pricing is incredible. So those of us that were paying 200 plus a month, not having to, as long as you can live in a streamed world, right? So I don't need cable TV content. If I can live in a streamed world, that's all I need, right? 300 meg service, I can do everything. I can do my Netflix. I can have, I don't know, untold number of devices in my home. I don't need to buy all these other things, more access points, denser access points, faster. I don't need to do any of that. I can just turn it on. Yes, sir?
And sir, I got to ask you at this point, so, and I appreciate your feedback on it. So it's my understanding, just in terms of electronic architecture, that with 5G, as you move to the higher millimeter wavelength, you're going to require more access. You're going to require more access points at greater line of sight or closer line of sight distances. So to achieve some of that, then you can in a current 4G LTE network.
So Verizon, for example, is available in 4 cities in the U.S. And when you talk about access points, it might be a naming thing, but when you go to these more densely populated areas, you will see an antenna on just about every pole in that area. San Jose is a perfect example where you can drive through their residential area and you'll see antennas on every pole. The limitation here, right, is that most of these providers do not share. AT&T, number one, right? So if that's my antenna up there, and those are my repeaters down below, AT&T isn't sharing with me. AT&T's got their own fiber to that pole, and they've got their own signals coming from that antenna. And that's the densification that I think you're talking about. When you get inside the home, right, you got ODAS and IDAS technology there that would allow you to hit a broad range of devices with more bandwidth inside that business or inside that home or outside that business or outside that home. Right. But when you look at infrastructure on the whole, the amount of money that you're going to have to come out of pocket to make this whole thing real versus what your provider is going to pay for, I think that's where the scales, at least temporarily, are going to be tilted in favor of you, meaning the provider's going to have to pick it up. I cannot tell you the investment that's already being made here, probably a year and a half in advance of when most of us are going to see even 5G on the phone. There's a couple phone companies out there that have a device that will work, and only in some markets. Again, the bad news is that your 4G phone will not pick up 5G. You will need a 5G phone with 5G chipset to get that kind of service. And I think conspiracy theory Mike says that's intentional. So we can sell 1.5 billion more devices here in the next year and a half, 2 years. Next. I want you to imagine also, by the way, that if this technology requires that little infrastructure, and if we're already crisscrossing the U.S. with that dense of fiber, right? The next Silicon Valley doesn't have to be in an infrastructure-laden location. I lived in Alpharetta, Georgia for a couple decades, and Alpharetta knew or wanted to be that tech center for Georgia. So they built multiple grids to feed multiple data centers. Their water was built to cool those huge data centers. And if you had a map of all those data centers, it would look impressive as to what Alpharetta was to create with the if you built it, they would come mentality. You won't need that down the road. So for those of you that live in larger metro areas, 5G can be seen, if not useful to you yet. You'll obviously see the antennas, you're going to see the ads, they're going to be pushing this as a cell phone type technology, but really this will be a game changer for when you look at how you use bandwidth in your home. More ways to compete means more choices, right? Actually, what I see in the next 5 years is that you'll see some consolidation because there's only so much room on the pole, right? If this is a pole-driven technology where I have to have an antenna up in the air, there is not enough room on a pole to put 20 different providers, right? So along the way, the guys that are there first, which are the Sprints, the AT&Ts, even the Metro PCSs, those guys are first there, they won't be booted off, so if you want to play, you'll probably have to rent some space from them. In rural areas, again, this is looking more like preparing for something as opposed to providing you with something. So the question is this really disruptive tech? Next slide, please. Does anyone know when the electric car was invented? 1830s. Do you know who attempted to make another electric car in the early 1900s? Who? Well, Daimler had the first car, but Edison and Ford tried to mass produce a car in the early 1900s. And Edison found out quickly that the batteries were part of the problem, right? Are electric cars disruptive to the car industry? Some would say no. Even today, as you're seeing cars develop, is it changing the way we buy? Is it changing the way we drive, our habits? Some would say golf carts might be truly disruptive, but you have to go to Peachtree City to see that for yourself. So is it disruptive? It seems to have all the markings of a disruptive technology. The things for us to take, our takeaways from this, I think, is we have to see, as businessmen, men and women, we have to see where our opportunities lie there. If you have a business that is driven by how much data I can get, how quickly can I get it, if it is a tech-driven industry, you need to start preparing now. Even though it's not here, you need to read about this stuff, you need to keep up with it. It will hit, and it will be great when it does. My business requires a lot of data, as much data as we can take as quickly as possible. If you're involved in AI, for example, more data the better, right? Getting data to you has always been a problem. And having the infrastructure to suck all this data in, because I had to have that massive amount of data next to my compute, that's been another problem, all requiring an investment. Now I can have my data separate and at long distances from my compute, and I can still get the job done. I'm not saying 5G is the game changer here. I'm saying 5G is the entree to what could change that equation. So the other ideas are, just follow the market, right? I can ignore the market, or I can find new markets for what I do, right? I'm fortunate in what I do. Most of the problems that we solve are people related. I'd love to say we're fixing computers and that's what makes people happy, but our implementations almost always are driven by a personality or three that seems to have a different idea from the organization. But when you look at 5G as a disruptive technology, is this something that you're geared up for? This is something that we're geared up for. This is what my company does, and we're very proud of that. I'm actually looking forward to what 6G and 7G have to have in store for us. But I want you to take note of this one observation. Next slide, please. Right now, you have internet, broadband, data, whatever you want to call it. It's ubiquitous, right? All of us take it for granted. We're starved for it wherever we go. As part of that, though, this is a pretty affluent bunch that's in this room. I want you to think of it in a slightly different way. There's a societal impact that comes with having this pervasive technology out there. Whether it's, I got a sick vet in rural Tennessee and he needs to get to the VA hospital, or at least in front of a VA doctor, he doesn't have a computer, right? If he did have a computer, how does he get to visit with his doc online? The societal impact to me is what's going to drive a lot of this demand and what I'm calling the fourth utility. So 5G, 6G, whatever you want to call it, speed-wise, whatever it needs to be, to me the fourth utility is going to come from the fact there already is in many cases, and I can't quantify it, I don't know the numbers, but your utilities have already put fiber on the pole. In many cases, they don't know what to do with it. They can't monetize it because it seems like a huge expense to them, but it's there. And in that it's there, right? There is a service that can be created for the community it serves. Much the same way as you got Jim Bob on the farm, like 30 miles outside of town, he's the only one out there. Guess what? They're going to put electricity on the pole, and they're going to run out to his farm. It's not going to matter to the utility how much it costs to get there. I think that when you look at broadband, it will serve the same purpose. Maybe not in the next 2 or 3 years, but as it gets faster, as this becomes more pervasive, I think you'll see it to be as ubiquitous and useful. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, 2 questions. And I'm a little bit biased because I was in the wireless data industry for a long, long time.
Right.
I experienced the whole transition from 2G all the way to 4G.
Right.
And one of the things that happened is a vast overestimation by the industry of the capability of those technologies and an underestimation of the acceleration of Moore's law in terms of data consumption rates on an individual level because of the power of the device that you give people in their hand, right?
Right.
So the question related to that issue is, what, in your opinion, is sort of some of the dark secrets that the industry is not talking about in terms of what's being overhyped and versus what's real with 5G? And then my other question is, there's a significant amount, and the last time I checked it was something like 400 and something different telcos and different industry businesses that have submitted a paper to the European Union complaining about the unclear health effects of 5G, and it's actually resulted in a slowdown of the rollout. What's your opinion on that?
Okay, so the first question is so I work with government, right? And I've not always been a big fan, I gotta tell you, right? Most of my career has been spent in the private sector. I've been pleasantly surprised at the folks I get to work with on a daily basis, how passionate they are about what they do. To that, I cannot tell you how much dark fiber there is out there that has been put up either with grant money or by large utilities like TVA or Southern Company, right? I mean, while they were putting power up, somebody thought it wise to put fiber up at the same time, but it's dark, right? So what the utility, what the comm companies did, right? They put it up, they lit it up, and they want to sell it to us. But they mark it up so high, the data I want, the service I want, I can't afford. I mean, let's face it, those of you, you said you had $215 a month for your cable bill. Are there still things that you wish you had? If money was no object, I know there would be for me. There's that sports package I can't afford, right? I'm not going to pay $90 a season for NHL. I'll watch 3 games, but they're good ones, right? I'll go to my friend's house next door. So, but when you talk about the unused resource, there's that. I got to tell you, on the health concerns, so I have friends that will walk around with tinfoil hats, and I realize that's real. But when you look at what those of us that lived through the flip phone era, anybody have a flip phone here? Is that much too dang young? So my Motorola flip phone I thought was the coolest thing known to man. But what I stuck up to my head was putting out a lot more of those cancer-driving energies, right, than what you're going to see on the pole. Now, I'll tell you, it's uncomfortable. I'm not going to build my house underneath high voltage lines, and I'm probably not going to want to move into a metro area that is serviced by 25 different providers, and the telephone pole looks like a Christmas tree. At the same time, right, I don't know that any of that is substantiated with real science. At least that's, and I still believe they put men on the moon. So, any other questions?
So any more questions, unfortunately, you'll have to catch him after this session because we have to move on to our next